Service Tradecraft Week. So, je vous souhaite la bienvenue. Je suis Pamela Eastfeld, la présidente de La Paz, and I am pictureless for the moment while Marty and I sort this out. So I'd like to welcome everyone to our first panel for Foreign Service Tradecraft Week, which is not really a conference, but an informal series of webinars and events intended to promote discussion and peer-to-peer kind of learning. So I'm super happy to have Abby Dan here as president of AM Canada and former ambassador several times, most recently in Kiev in Ukraine, and with her panel of other ambassadors who are here to talk to us about trade secrets. So since you can't see me, I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to turn over the chair to Abby to introduce herself and the rest of the panel with our thanks. And I just wanted to add as well that I wanted to note that PAFSO is hosting this and all the other webinars from the traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people, and we acknowledge and respect them as the past, present, and future caretakers of this land. So I will turn everything over to Abby at this point, and with thanks.
Okay. Thank you so much, Pamela, and je vous souhaite aussi la bienvenue à notre équipe de anciennes chefs de mission. Nous avons vraiment des collègues avec des expériences très intéressantes à partager. So I have with me here 3 colleagues. We run the gamut from Asia to Europe to Africa and everything in terms of our assignments. Let me just give a quick introduction of our first speaker. Ian has a varied career, but the things that are most important really, I think, are the fact that all of these colleagues want to share with you some secrets, or not so secret, about what we would call home tradecraft, the kind of thing that your head of mission has to worry about and think about, and especially things that may not always be readily apparent, because any hom is like a duck paddling like crazy underneath, but staying calm on the surface for the team. And at the same time, you know, it's surprising sometimes what are the areas of hom tradecraft that are most important. So just to keep sort of a little bit of spice, I will give the biography of each person just in front of them speaking, because I think that way you'll remember better. And I'd like to start with Ian Burchett, who's kindly assembled our colleagues for this panel. Ian has a lot of sort of different areas of experience, but he's had a lot of experience in Asia, East Asia, and also in communications, and also in investment and business. He was our consul general to Hong Kong and Macau, and he also opened our consulate in Monterrey, Mexico, which was a real sort of time when we were really starting to look at the hemisphere. And he also was our envoy to Myanmar and Rohingya task force. And he's been, you know, Director General of the Asia Pacific Bureau and Communications, et cetera, et cetera. So very, very, very accomplished and varied background. Et aussi, je dois dire que Ian est une spécialiste internationale dans le sujet de inclusion et diversité. Alors, s'il vous plaît, Ian, si vous voulez partager vos grands secrets du tradecraft de chef de mission.
Bonjour, merci beaucoup, Abby. C'est vraiment un plaisir d'être ici avec mes anciens collègues et mes grands amis Stuart Beck et Virginie Saint-Louis. Ce matin, ça m'a fait plaisir de parler un peu de le défi et les opportunités de réseautage, networking across the mission. It's something that I always enjoyed very much as I was working at the mission to really connect people across the mission and ensure that all of our programs were working not only for their own objectives, but keeping an eye out for what was happening in the other programs, and then harnessing that energy to advance Canadian interests in the outside territory. And also, of course, back in Canada, when you look at the different communities that each of our programs are responsible for. Pour moi-même, c'est un grand défi à Hong Kong parce que moi, je suis arrivé 8 mois après la dernière chef de mission. Et ensuite, avec cette absence, il y avait beaucoup de choses qui se passaient. And so it was important for me to, when I arrived in Hong Kong, to really look at how the mission was organized and how it was working together, but also to reignite the role of the head of mission with the local community. The team had worked extremely well during the absence of not having a full-time head of mission, but I was a newbie head of mission, and so I started the ground running. And so what I would like to talk about today during my presentation is not only working on the networking inside a mission, but the importance of networking outside the mission and, and how you link the two together. One of our former colleagues and a good friend of all of ours, Sarah Detsky, gave me some very wise advice early on when I was taking the head of mission course, and that was to take the time to know the mission, get to know the people across the mission, the dynamics of the mission, and in this way, meet every single employee alone at the mission. Now in Hong Kong, our mission consisted of 123 locally engaged staff and 22 Canadian diplomats. And so if you averaged meetings of 10 to 15 minutes per person, you can it would take some time to get through the mission, but I kept at it for the first few weeks. And I think this really helped people get to know me and for me to understand each of the colleagues who I was going to be working with. It was as an aside, I arrived at the time of the Deficit Reduction Action Plan. And so a lot of people were quite concerned at the beginning that this new guy was going to come in and start cutting jobs and cutting positions. And there was a lot of anxiety about individual meetings of in the head of missions office. But I really wanted to just get to know people, and soon the word got out that these were not those types of meetings that were going to be canceling jobs, and it was really an opportunity to get to know one another. And as one of my colleagues once said, I can see what you want to do. You have to look at us like a toolbox, and you can't really use us and work with us if you don't know where the tools are and what the tools are responsible for. And I thought that was a very good analogy. And we often hear in our work about, as head of mission and as diplomats, the importance of a whole of government approach, but it's also a whole of mission approach. And that was something that I really tried to instill in colleagues, that immigration supports trade, trade supports the political, economic, et aussi nos collègues dans le consulaire et l'administration doivent travailler droitement avec tous les différents programmes. Et ça, c'est vraiment important pour la mission et pour le chef de mission de comprendre tous les grands défis et les opportunités les programmes et de la promotion de tous les programmes avec l'extérieur de la mission. One of the things I tried to do is to really get people from other mission programs to work alongside their colleagues on special events and to introduce those colleagues in immigration who perhaps had never been involved in trade programs or a ministerial visit or other things that would help broaden their awareness and get them involved in things. And one of the things is to ensure that people understand what the strategic objective is and what you're trying to achieve early on, and show your excitement and share your excitement for the job. And I think this is really helpful. It also allows people to broaden their experience and know that you have not only an interest in their program, but you have an interest in how they are working together with their colleagues. And as Stuart and Virginie will touch upon, when you get to some challenges, by having those connections, by having those awarenesses and communications with different colleagues, you can get the job done a lot easier. Moi, j'ai travaillé avec différents groupes de travail dans la mission et moi, j'ai trouvé que c'était vraiment une opportunité pour les gens de communiquer droitement avec chaque personne. When we arrived in Hong Kong, one of the challenges we had was that the mission was soon going to be divided into two parts in that two separate locations. And so by understanding these, all of the programs, we had trade and public affairs and the political section and the head of missions office in downtown Hong Kong. And then about 11, 12 kilometers away, we had consular, the administration section, and immigration working. And so it was important that the two offices collaborated together. And so as a head of mission, and I know Stuart and Virginie will speak to this as well from their experiences, and Abby certainly, is not to hide in your office, is to get out and be seen in the mission, be engaged with the different mission, parts of the mission, and so that they get to see you in action. And that's very important. When looking to the outside, building alliances was very critical. In Hong Kong, we had plus que 320,000 Canadiens qui habitent à Hong Kong. It's our largest concentration of Canadians anywhere in the world outside of Canada. And so we had a number of Canadian organizations, which the mission was very close to: the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, the Canadian Club, the many different alumni associations of Canadian universities and colleges, and other business organizations. And of course, the network of like-minded missions, which are also represented in Hong Kong, over 115 of them. And it was obviously very critical to get engaged with them. As my spouse and partner said early on, because I was away from home all the time, doing different events, I would attend the opening of a door. But it was important to be out there and engaging early on. And remember that the ship may be the same, but the captains have changed. And as the captain of the mission, as the head of the mission, it's important that people get to know you, and networking is really critical in that regard. I often use the example that networking is like dating. You need to show an interest if you want a second date, and if you don't show that interest, you're going to lose that opportunity. And so early on, I looked at one particular way of how could I continue to engage with the individuals that I was meeting with. And that was to send a short, very, very short, one-page little handwritten letter to everyone I met. My assistants, I had two while I was in Hong Kong, used to call these my little love letters. But while I was in Hong Kong, I sent out close to 14,000 love letters to my contacts. And it was just a little note at the end, and it was a chance to really show people that I was engaged. One of the things that it did is it made people feel appreciated and valued. We did the same thing in Beijing. L'ambassadeur à l'époque, Joseph Caron, a créé un réseau de 100 personnes, the Canada 100 list. Et on a écrit ces personnes différentes lettres chaque 3 mois, et on a envoyé différents articles d'intérêt, et on a vraiment partagé avec eux les succès du Canada en la Chine, parce qu'il y avait beaucoup de concurrence pour l'intérêt et pour créer un réseau important pour le Canada. It was really a way of creating target influencers. And so in this way, we had a network which would help do things and help advance our interests. The most important thing, I think, in this regard is to have fun. Look for areas which your colleagues see you at ease and to see you enjoying yourself. I remember very well, we had a BlackBerry event where we had BlackBerry was launching a new product in Hong Kong for the business community. And at my encouragement, we had 40, 50 key guests at the official residence. And BlackBerry gave every single guest a new BlackBerry device that they were launching at the event. And this really created a great deal of buzz at the event and a great deal of fun. Another event we had was the launching of Angava gin, which is a very popular gin across Canada and a very unique gin made in Quebec. And with my team at the official residence, we created a menu where every menu item that we served to our guests, which were different restaurateurs and sommelier and other people, was cooked with gin. And at the end, we gave them a little bottle of gin to take away. But it created a buzz and it was something fun and different. And I think that's what you're looking for. It's also important to reach out to the new generation. In Hong Kong, we have a lot of family funds, people who've long ties to Canada. But nouvelle génération, c'est très important. Ils n'ont pas le même réseau avec le Canada, les mêmes communications avec le Canada. Et les jeunes peuvent aider le Canada beaucoup plus avec leur intérêt. And to use the official residence to benefit the Canadian community. In my time in Hong Kong, we had alumni gatherings at the official residence. The Chamber of Commerce used the official residence, corporate events for Manulife, the different banks, as well as the investment funds, allowed us to meet their particular contacts, but also to show that Canada was on the mark and partnering with them. And this created a new balanced area for us to create these networkings. I finally would just conclude by saying that networking is an art and not everybody is into it. It's something that needs to be fine-tuned to your own particular character, to find that balance of being engaged but not a pest, to walk around the mission, to show an interest with your colleagues, but don't feel that they're being watched so closely, but to be engaged and be a friend, a friendly supporter. And in this regard, think about the human touch as you're head of mission. We each of us have good days and bad days. Especially when we lose a loved one, a mother or father. And if you're aware of the people who are working with you, a little note, and I'm not talking about an email, I'm really talking about a handwritten note to a colleague to say that you're very sorry on their loss. And that heartfelt engagement will go a long way in creating a network, which will, in the end, be part of your team and help you and grow the mission as a unit and as a team. And remember, of course, as Abby has reflected, while the HOM is a job, everybody is watching you. And so to be engaged and strategic is very critical. In my career, I've always found networking to be the most exciting and the most enjoyable part of my job. Ça me donne l'occasion de créer des opportunités pour le Canada et aussi de connecter les gens de la mission avec l'extérieur et l'extérieur de la mission avec les différents programmes. So with that, Abby, I'll leave it and pass it back to you, and look forward to the discussion we will have avec nos collègues et les gens de La Paz, et merci beaucoup pour cette opportunité.
Thank you so much, Ian. Yes, frankly, now, particularly with the internet, information is easy to get. What's not easy to get is relationships on the ground with the people that matter, and to have also the personal, professional relationship of trust, so that when things happen, you have that kind of a network set up. This is the real job of diplomacy these days, and I think it's not always fully appreciated how much that is important. You know, in the old days, it used to be you were also gathering the information from the local scene. But now with so much information, that role has been reduced. And I wonder if the next generation of diplomats understand how much the relationship aspect matters, not only for AHAM, but in every single one of your jobs as well. So speaking of the importance of networking, I would like to introduce you to our next speaker, Virginie Saint-Louis. And Virginie definitely, I'm sure, relied on her networks when she was head of mission in Bamako, au Mali, durant une crise avec comme le kidnapping de deux de nos diplomates, Robert Fowler and Louis Gay. Laissez-moi, s'il vous plaît, donner une petite introduction à Virginie, qui a fait son bac en sciences économiques à Moncton, après ça, développement international à Grenoble, et son doctorat à l'Université de Paris à Sorbonne. Virginie était affectée au beaucoup de postes en Égypte, Vietnam, au Maroc. Mais en 2008, elle était nommée ambassadrice du Canada à Bamako. Elle était là pour 4 ans, comme j'ai dit, durant cette crise qui durait presque 1 an et demi, je crois. Et certainement, le réseautage et le respect pour elle et le Canada, et aussi la confiance de la communauté, du gouvernement, des deux côtés, etc., a joué un très grand rôle dans le succès qu'elle avait eu. Alors, Virginie aussi était affectée au bureau du conseil privé, et elle a aussi beaucoup d'expérience dans le domaine de sécurité et évidemment la francophonie. Virginie, à vous la parole, s'il vous plaît.
Bonjour tout le monde. Thank you, Abby, for your kind words. I'm very pleased to be with you today, and I've been asked, in fact, to speak about crisis management in missions. During my ambassadorship in Mali from 2008 and to 2012, I was involved in the management of 2 major crises. In fact, the first one, as Abby mentioned, was the kidnapping of our colleagues Bob Fowler and Louis Gay, who remained 4 months in captivity in northern Mali after being abducted in Niger. The second crisis was the coup of March 21st, 2012 in Bamako, which resulted in the closure of the embassy for a few days and the removal of a large part of the CBS staff and their family. Maybe I should give you a bit of context. Mali was at that time the 3rd largest recipient of the Canadian Development Assistance after Afghanistan and Haiti. It was praised as for its stability, for its democratic institutions. Around 400 Canadians resided in the country, and we had some major mining companies that were based there as well. The embassy consisted in 2008 of 7 CBS, and by the time I left the post, In 2012, it consisted of 16 CBS with all major programs. And we always had about 30 LES. Now, quelques mots sur les crises elles-mêmes. Bon, Fallergay, en fait, nos collègues ont été kidnappés 6 semaines après que je sois arrivée en poste. Donc, c'était un véritable défi, surtout quand on est nouvelle ambassadrice. Et je suis arrivée, en plus, je n'avais pas le titre d'ambassadeur, j'étais en fait chargée dans la mesure où il n'y avait pas eu d'ordre en conseil, puisqu'il y avait eu, je dirais, on était dans les élections au Canada. Bref, c'était un beau défi, mais pour permettre à l'ambassadeur en place de gérer la mission, il est de tradition que le ministère envoie une équipe interministérielle qui ne s'occupe que du dossier kidnapping. Et cette mission avait été menée, et je dois lui rendre hommage aujourd'hui, par Mark Bailey. Mark nous a quittés récemment et je dois dire que c'était un superbe collègue et d'une grande humanité. Et il a mené cette mission avec brio. Donc, en tant qu'ambassadrice, je devais agir sur tous les fronts, travailler étroitement avec la nouvelle équipe, gérer l'ambassade. Je dois rappeler qu'à l'époque, le Canada était le 2e donateur au Mali, donc il y avait un grand programme de coopération, mais j'étais l'interface en fait des autorités maliennes, particulièrement du président qui a été très impliqué dans la résolution de l'enlèvement, et la mission était aussi toute petite, donc je devais à la fois gérer les médias canadiens, étrangers. D'ailleurs, j'avais eu l'occasion de travailler avec plaisir avec Ian qui m'avait donné beaucoup de soutien. C'était à l'époque où les ambassadeurs ne devaient pas parler à la presse. Je ne sais pas si vous vous souvenez de ce temps-là. On avait quand même assez de restrictions. Et bien sûr, il y avait toutes les autres relations avec les autres missions diplomatiques, le réseautage, effectivement, avec la coopération, avec les entreprises privées, etc. Donc, après 4 mois de travail acharné, les otages ont enfin été libérés le 21 avril. Deuxième crise, celle du coup d'État de mars 2012. Alors, il prend tout le monde par surprise parce qu'en fait, il est orchestré par des militaires qui sont non gradés et qu'on ne connaît pas. Donc, l'après-midi du 21 mars, il y a des coups de feu à Bamako qui commencent à être entendus. Et ces coups de feu qui sont au centre-ville se rapprochent de plus en plus de l'ambassade. La télévision n'émet plus, c'est-à-dire que quand une télévision n'émet plus, c'est souvent un signe majeur de coup d'État. Ensuite, on s'aperçoit qu'il y a des camions remplis de militaires qui tournent dans les rues en tirant en l'air. Et là, bien sûr, après diverses rapides consultations, j'appelle Ottawa, je les informe de la situation et il faut absolument fermer l'ambassade au plus vite et renvoyer les Canadiens et les employés locaux chez eux et déclencher le plan d'urgence. Donc, l'ambassade restera fermée 5 jours. Et 3 semaines plus tard, la majeure partie des employés canadiens et des familles canadiennes quittent Bamako. Et donc, j'ai dû ordonner, y compris le départ de mes propres enfants. Donc, maintenant, quelques observations spécifiques à Bamako, qui était alors une petite mission et qui est devenue une moyenne mission. Mais on l'a vu, ces crises, elles sont différentes en nature, mais elles ont beaucoup de similitudes. Et il y a un constat que j'ai toujours fait, c'est qu'une crise, elle arrive toujours au moment où on s'y attend le moins. Et l'instrument le plus important pour gérer la crise, je dirais, the essence of the crisis management in mission, it's le plan d'urgence, en fait. Je crois que c'est un nouveau nom à l'heure actuelle, mais de mon temps, ça s'appelait le plan d'urgence. Et il faut absolument que l'ambassadeur s'y intéresse, s'assure qu'il soit bien fait, qu'il soit révisé régulièrement. Il faut dans ce plan qui comprend toutes sortes de composantes, qu'on puisse parler du personnel qui restera à la mission, personnel essentiel, des indicateurs qui vont faire en sorte qu'on va savoir quand est-ce qu'il faut évacuer les gens, comment on s'occupe aussi de la communauté canadienne. Donc, je dois dire que s'agissant du rôle de l'ambassadeur, en situation de crise, je me suis aperçue qu'il y avait véritablement 3 choses très importantes. La communication, à l'interne et à l'externe. À l'interne, bien sûr, on a nos rendez-vous quotidiens avec la cellule de crise de l'ambassade. Ensuite, il faut communiquer avec Ottawa. Ensuite, communiquer avec les employés, par radio le plus souvent, dans la mesure où il faut les aider, il faut veiller à leur bien-être, au moins faire baisser les tensions. Il faut aussi avoir des relations, et comme la communauté était petite au Mali, je peux le faire, c'est avoir des relations avec nos fameux wardens, des fameux chefs d'îlots, très importants, mais aussi les compagnies minières, le secteur privé, les ONG. Tout cela était très important au niveau interne. Maintenant, bien sûr, au niveau externe, la communication était très fondamentale avec notamment les autorités qui restaient, mais aussi avec les journalistes, avec nos collègues. Et je dirais que en Afrique au moins, ce que j'ai remarqué, c'est que oui, les collègues du G7, l'Europe, c'est important, mais ce n'est pas forcément ceux-là qui savent ce qui se passe sur le terrain. C'est aussi aller au-delà de nos alliances naturelles et aller voir les pays comme le Sénégal, les pays limitrophes, le Sénégal, la Côte d'Ivoire, le Burkina Faso, qui eux, l'Algérie, la Libye, pas la Libye, pardon, la Mauritanie, qui avaient un sens de ce qui se passait sur le terrain. Deuxièmement, je dirais esprit d'équipe, inclusivité. C'est très important dans les crises. Même si c'est difficile, il faut essayer d'inclure les gens, d'être transparent, de leur transmettre en fait ce que l'on sait, mais aussi cette espèce d'esprit qui fait qu'on va vers le même chemin, on va vers la résolution de crise. Je pourrais parler par exemple durant la crise Fowler-Gay, il y avait un petit peu comme 2 équipes. Il y avait l'équipe de la mission interministérielle et l'équipe des Canadiens et des employés locaux. It was very important for me to make sure that the CBS staff and the LES, they were included in that research to resolve the problem of our colleague Bob and Louis. It was very important that they felt appreciated, but they help us, and particularly the LES help us a lot because they had some contacts, the networking, as Ian had said, and Abby as well, was very important in that case. Finally, I would say that très important d'essayer d'être attentif aux besoins du personnel. Besoins du personnel parce que dans une situation de crise, il y a des gens qui sont plus sujets à la pression, au stress, à la panique. Et on s'aperçoit que parfois, des gens que l'on pensait qui devraient rester derrière ne peuvent pas rester, ne peuvent pas être le personnel essentiel. In that case, it's even though you are on the list to stay behind and to stay with the team on the ground, no, you have to go because you'll be better off with your family and in Canada. La chose qu'on se rend compte quand tu es en situation de crise, il vaut mieux être une petite équipe solide que d'être une équipe plus large et qui peut subir le stress. J'ai parlé certainement trop longtemps. Il y aurait plein de choses à dire. Peut-être qu'il y aura des questions. Mais on the last remark, I wanted to say that in a crisis situation, we are not alone. We are very fortunate here in Canada to have a department and great colleagues that fully support us when we are on the ground. And I can say that I was very lucky in this regard, and I would like, in fact, to thank them again, because without them, we couldn't have done what we've done and we've been through. Merci beaucoup à tous. Je suis vraiment prête à prendre la parole et à vos questions.
Merci beaucoup,
Merci.
Virginie. C'est fascinant parce que c'est pas toujours que nous avons une fenêtre sur une crise qui a vraiment accaparé l'attention des Canadiens et le monde même pour une grande bout de temps. I should just mention right now that if you're having some questions boiling up inside you, please do put them in the Q&A. And if you wish to underline someone else's question that you're interested in, you can sort of upvote questions on the Q&A. We'll be going to the Q&A portion after we hear from our next speaker, Stuart Beck. Et en parlant de la priorité qu'il faut donner aux matières de personnel, Stu Beck was a big person actually in personnel in our department. He was Director General responsible for senior management and rotational assignments, which is not an easy job, I'm sure he will tell you. And he's also had very extensive experience in terms of managing missions as Consul General in Shanghai and Consul General in San Francisco, and finally as our representative, our High Commissioner to India and Bhutan and Nepal. I should also mention that Stu was also our ADM for International Business Development and Investment. So he, again, has a very varied, wide career with many areas. And I'd like to invite you now, Stu, to tell us some of the secrets of your tradecraft.
Merci beaucoup, Abby. C'est vraiment un plaisir de partager quelques mots avec mes anciens collègues et mes amis. You know, I'm here on the unceded territory of the Coast Salish people in Vancouver, the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. So it's a pleasure to be with you today. I feel a little bit like I'm batting cleanup here in the sense of HR and issues around personnel are really fundamental to the success of any organization. And first and foremost, I'll talk a little bit about LES, but I think it's really, you know, both Abby and Ian in their conversations, you know, highlighted the importance of people in what they do. And that's our job. Our job is about people. It's our job's about networking. Our job's about the staff and how we go about doing the job. So I can't underline enough the importance of understanding HR, the elements of HR. And, you know, I think today in the department, I think more so than perhaps in the past, certainly many, many years ago, where, you know, HR and finance, for example, two things that were kind of things that we didn't really like to do. Somebody else would deal with it. You know, the MCO would deal with that, you know, other things. But ultimately, at the end of the day, heads of mission have to get involved in this process and need to know and understand what's going on with people. So I'll start with first with LES. And, you know, I'm going to be a bit frank on a lot of problems, but also I'll be very optimistic on a lot of other elements as well. So you cannot operate, quite frankly, as a head of mission or as a Canada-based staff abroad without the support of your LES. They are fundamental to what you do. They are the continuity. They are the experience, and they help you navigate the system. So how you work with your LES is important. Saying that, at the same time, they're there and we move, okay? So when there are problems, they can wait out the problems until the next person comes in. And so you really need to understand the importance of what it takes to motivate a group of people who are actually serving the Canadian government. Many are very proud of the fact that they're serving the Canadian government. It's a very good job in many of the communities. So if you're in a place like India, for example, people scramble because it's a good paying job, and also you have the profile of working at a high commission, and you know you're within your community. And you know, quite frankly, this is a point that I would make about working with LES. You know, you might say the caste system doesn't exist in India anymore, but it still does. Okay, and so you can see that within even if you walk into the cafeteria at the High Commission, you'll see people sitting within their own caste. Okay, so you need to understand some of the basic elements of what's involved in a society. And you know, both Ian and I were posted. I think Virginia also was in the United States, And it's a bit of a system in the United States that you have to get to understand. There's a jungle telegraph that goes across the missions in the United States, and the LES are very aware of the different types of people that are working in those environments. They check each other of the regulations and the things that go on. I think, Abby, I think you also would have experienced this. So you need to be very, how you move and operate and work, you need to understand that it gets communicated very broadly. And whether it's a mission like India, which is 400 people, of which there's probably, if I remember correctly, close to 65 Canada-based, and the rest are locally engaged staff. You got to, it's on a compound of 11 acres. You have 125 Canadians living on that compound between the officers and their families. It's a small city. You're like a mayor of a small city, and with all the problems that are involved with something like that. So again, as much as you want to be out there doing your job, promoting Canada, whether it's trade, understanding the political environment that's going on, ultimately, you still have to have a very good sense of what's going on with the people that are in your mission. So when I started, my first assignment abroad was San Francisco, and which was a great experience. That's where I met my wife, and I think a lot of us meet our spouses on our first assignments, but I also went a year later down to Silicon Valley, and I opened a one-man office in the Valley, so you don't have to worry about HR. Okay, so that's the reality. I lived there for 4 or 5 years, and then I moved, and I just want to give a shout out in this talk to Rick Kohler, who's on the line. So Rick is a tie that binds myself and Ian. Rick introduced me to Ian many years ago when I went to Miami. But the point that I would make just here is that it's understanding and being sensitive. So I worked with Rick at the very beginning of my career. We were all in a room together, creating the EX platform that we have in the department. So writing job descriptions, and then doing evaluation rationales for the EX system itself, as you see it today. It was a very, very boring job, and you have a lot of really bright people. And the reality is, and this functions, this is a comment both on LES and Canada base. Not every job is a James Bond-like job, and so you're in a situation where there's a lot of day-to-day grinding, and certainly the experience I shared with Rick and others in that group. There were 4 of us that had to do this incredibly boring job, and the only reason we were successful, I think, at the end of the day, 2 reasons. One, we stuck with it, and that was because of Rick. I mean, quite frankly, if he didn't have the bon ami, the come in every day with some great jokes and good humor, and he kept us going on something that we said, why did we join the Foreign Service to sit here and do paperwork, right? It was just a terrible type of activity. But then again, Rick also understood that what was important about talent, and this is a message again to people who want to be heads of mission: understand your talent, understand what their strengths and weaknesses are. And I made a decision to leave the department when I was in Silicon Valley after 4 years, thinking I could strike out and make it on my own. And you have all sorts of different pressures in your life. And this is something else you need to understand, that people undergo a lot of pressure. And at the time, the decision was, for me, now it's quite a bit different. But then it was, you make a decision, you stay in the department or you leave the department. Okay. And I made the decision to leave the department. A year later, things weren't, going the way I was hoping. And out of the blue, Rick gives me a call and says, "Hey, what are you doing these days? Right? And would you like to come back and do something on a contract basis?" And, quite frankly, I went, and he, ended up doing a contract to open the office in Miami, which again, that's how I got to know Ian, because Rick was suggested that Ian come down and work in Miami at that time. And we worked together. Ian would in Jamaica, and he would come into Miami and work the purveyor network in Miami that was operating in all the Caribbean. And again, without Rick, I don't think I would have been where I am today. And it's just a question of understanding talent. Okay, and as if you want to be a senior manager, you really have to understand the talent that you're working with and how you do that. The same is true when you come to LES. So when you go to a mission, so I've been in one-man missions. I've been in a small mission, like San Francisco. When I went back as Consul General, there weren't very many people. Like Delhi. And in between, you have Shanghai, which, and Taipei, which was long term. So I had in almost every mission that I had, or obviously in a place like India, there's more than just one, but in Taipei, for example, Ian was talking about networks and how you build networks. And it's very difficult for Canadian to go into a place like Taiwan and build a network without the help of the LES, okay? So finding that person who has that access and who knows and understands how to make it happen, they become your docent. They become the person who helps set you up. And then if you are inspiring them, as Ian said, you have a vision, you have an idea of where you want to take the mission or your program at the time and how you can get people to buy into that and get them to work together in that. They become really, they get excited by it, and they really help you build that opportunity that you're trying to create in a place like Taiwan. So to my time in Taiwan, and James Lee, who was a fantastic locally engaged officer, did a tremendous amount to build our presence in Taiwan. He moved on to investment work in Shanghai. He was a very good officer. I think about my time in Shanghai, and I had a person who was running our public diplomacy program on the LES side, who also acted as my translator there. And they were really, I had access that the U.S. Consul General did not have. And it wasn't until I was leaving that I found out that she was a member of the party. And then again, when you're looking at places, it's very difficult, and Ian would know this, because the government wants you to take their employees. Okay, so the Foreign Service, what was it called, FSB? I can't remember what it was called, Ian, but they would basically, you have an opening and they would suggest somebody. Well, when I got to Shanghai, I just said, this is not going to work. Okay, so I went back and I talked to them and to the foreign, what was it called? Anyway, the Foreign Affairs Group department, and I said to them, look, when we hire people here, I understand, you want to basically put your own people into our mission. I'll cut you a deal. Okay, we will go out and hire, and we will say as a term and condition to being hired at the consulate, we will insist that they become a member of the Foreign Service Diplomatic Bureau. I think that's what it was called. And that, of course, means that they increase the number of people, all the different things that go on. It's a crazy place in China, and I can answer some of the questions around that in particular. So, having Joy was, a tremendous benefit to not just myself, but to the whole mission. And then the same thing was true in Delhi. There were a couple of people, when I came to Delhi, I found it really hard to get to know people at the senior government level. And I couldn't figure it out. The heads of mission have a social secretary that's an LES, and the social secretary that was there at the time had been in Delhi when I went to Delhi back in the days when they did these, wasn't a single assignment, but temporary duty. I was there for 3 months in 1983. And the social secretary I had as a head of mission, she was working as a trade assistant in 1983. So she had been there for almost 40 years and she was the social assistant. So her energy level had been fading, let's put it that way, to put it politely. And so I had to reorganize the protocol section and brought somebody in who was remarkable. I mean, fundamentally remarkable. And all of a sudden, meetings I didn't get, I was getting. Okay, and so again, it's understanding what you're trying to achieve, and then building the team around that. Because ultimately, as I said at the very beginning, that team that you have is really what's going to help Canada, and you as Canada's representative, as we're talking as heads of mission, or you as a program manager, that team is going to make you the most effective person possible. So again, at the end of the day, I'll go back to what I said at the beginning. It's all about people. And I can talk about a lot of the difficulties that emerged, and a lot of the things I saw as when I was running HR on the rotational side for the department. There are lots of problems. And my last word to you as a group is just remember, you're not entitled. At the end of the day, you're a diplomat and working abroad as a Canadian diplomat, but you come back as a bureaucrat to Ottawa. And so you just need to understand that there is these things that you have to cope with. And these are one of the bigger problems I had to deal with when I was the Director General for HR, is dealing with people who had changed their focus on life. Okay. And that's something, just to keep yourself grounded and understand that at the end of the day, you're a bureaucrat that works with the Canadian government. So I'll leave it there, Abby.
Okay, well, thank you so much. We certainly have a lot of meat to chew on. I'll just have please feel free. I have a few questions I'd like to pose to get us going. But please do put your questions in the Q&A, and I will let our panel know about them. Just before we go to that, though, having been head of mission at a post, well, a couple of them, where I was coming in after, let's say, there had been a fair bit of dysfunctionality at these posts for various reasons. I'd say, you know, the secrets of home tradecraft are, I think, very scalable to any position in the Foreign Service. And the first thing is know your files, you know your stuff. Don't try to BS things. Know your stuff. That will get you the respect of all of your workers, CBS and LES. The other thing is, it's amazing how often at a post, a lot of the LES and sometimes even the CBS, because they're not included in sort of the higher level discussions, they don't really have a clear sense of what is the purpose of the mission, what is the strategy the mission is following right now. So in my posts, I have made a point to have a big town hall after I got to know people and say, okay, you know, this is what we're doing. What do you think about it? And boy, when they know what they're doing, do they ever, you know, fall in with the sort of the inspiration of something? And that's the other thing. There has to be something inspirational. There has to be something that's good, not only for Canada, but for the country that they represent. So they feel that you're working together. The other things have been covered very well. One is just the whole question of human relations. You know, so many of the posts we go to, the people in those posts who live in those countries are really dealing with very difficult human conditions, living conditions, psychological conditions. Believe me, you don't know what it is to have lived in the former Soviet Union until you go to a post there and you live in that country. I had never realized, you can read about it, but I had never realized how incredibly oppressive and frightening that is to people. And there are many places in the world where people are living in this kind of fearful mentality. The other thing too is, you know, have fun. We always had fun. Another big thing is be creative. You know, missions and bureaucracy tends to get to be boring. It tends to be a grind. And, you know, if you allow people to show the talent they have, I mean, you wouldn't believe the kind of explosion you get from people sometimes you didn't expect in terms of what they can contribute. Another thing, and you know, this is perhaps more of a woman's perspective, but hospitality, give people really good food and wine. You know, make Canada's table wherever you go one of the best in town. If you can beat the French with your table and your, you know, joie de vivre and your accueil and all those things, 50% of all my best new contacts that I ever made for Canada came from the hospitality we were able to give. And especially honoring the cuisine of the country we were in, as well as providing Canadian cuisine. So, you know, not the usual diplomatic, you know, dry crust stuff, but something really special and Canadian. And then the other thing is, you know, in Ukraine, but also in Brazil, but especially in a more closed society like Ukraine, learn the language so you don't have to go through interpreters, and you can speak directly with the people. And especially in societies which are more oppressed, this is a very, very key thing. If you're able to talk to people on your own and they can come around to trusting you. And then the last thing, which Virginie touched on, is Go to non-traditional sources of diplomatic networking. Some of the best intelligence I ever got from what was going on in Ukraine came from the Maghrebian ambassadors with whom I had a big relationship because of La Francophonie. These guys were plugged in and they had info that G7 did not have, okay? So look to be very creative in how you network, you know, follow your nose, don't follow the book. So these are just a few comments I have, and now I see that we have a question, which is from Vaskan Kabayan. Okay, what are the challenges you see with dealing with CBS who are from non-Gaac departments? This is a good one, Vaskan. Or from other levels of government in terms of getting them to work as team members? Very good question, Vaskan. So what are the challenges dealing with CBS who are from non-Gaac? Stu, could I ask you to maybe lead on that?
Yes, well, Delhi is a good example because you have almost every government department in Delhi, starting with CSIS, RCMP, D&D, Ag Canada. I mean, there's a whole spectrum of missions, and of course, immigration, which is the largest section in Delhi. So again, the advantage of a place like Delhi is that a lot of the people from different sections all live together on the compound. So you had roughly 35 families living on the compound, many of them, you know, from immigration from the different sections. And so that's a natural bond, okay, whether it's around the Canada Club, whether it's around, you know, the pool. So it can be good, it can be bad. It can be good when it's, you know, when it's a positive environment and everything is working well, but it can be also bad because everybody talks about it. So how you manage that process is always difficult. And that's why, you know, I said earlier that being the head of mission in Delhi, it's almost like being the mayor of a city. So you're dealing with a lot of the issues that, again, are people issues, okay? And it doesn't matter whether they're working in immigration or they're working in D&D. They are people at the end of the day, and they have their own concerns about the different things that go on. And you know, in your place like Delhi, and one of the things I meant to say earlier is that you have to cope with the stresses that go on, okay? And the big stress in a place like Delhi is being sick, okay? And I would always meet with the new staff, and I would say to them at the beginning, expect to get sick. Okay, you will get sick. You've got to get sick because unless you get sick, you won't be able to build the kind of immunities that you need. And you know, so there's some people would want so hard to avoid it, they would never leave the compound. Okay, and that's not the best situation to be in when you're living in a country. You have to get out and you have to get to see the country, get to need to understand it. So when it comes to managing the people themselves in a work environment, it's very difficult, again, because you don't necessarily write their appraisal. You may be the head of mission and you may have overall responsibility, but the immigration program manager in his mind really reports to the person in Ottawa that he is dealing with. And so how you build that relationship with, in my case, with the immigration program manager was so critical because it was fundamental to a lot of the things that we were trying to do in India at that point in time. One was, you know, if you ever hear a complaint, you go to, and I'll just, you know, laid along a little bit to what Abby said, the non-traditional way of getting to know senior people in Delhi is by going to book launches. Okay, if you go to book launches, you meet ministers, you meet senior bureaucrats. Everybody of any substance in India likes to write a book and they like to go to book launches. So you meet people there, right? And that's just a reality. And so if you understand that and you use it to your advantage, it's important. But again, it's being able to, you know, I'd go to a book launch or I'd go to a meeting with a lot of Indians, and the biggest complaint was about how long it took to get a visa and all the issues around that. I can't go to the immigration program manager and tell him, issue the visas faster. That's not going to work. But he needs to, you know, by having a conversation, getting to know and understand the person and what their interests are and their experience level. I mean, and you approach it not by saying, I want you to do this, because it's never going to work that way, particularly with the immigration people. It's how do we make this work better? How do we work on our service standards? And, you know, things like that are important. The other thing was around students. You know, when I arrived in Delhi, we issued 3,000 student permits a year. And the issue, you know, again, in my mind, how can we not issue more? So we set some goals, we looked at some different things, and we worked together from an immigration perspective on how we could help that system, but ensure the integrity of the visa processing going on. Now, we have the most number of foreign students we have in Canada are Indians. Okay, so we went from 3,000 student permits a year in 2010 when I arrived, and today they're doing 35,000 student permits, which puts a tremendous amount of strain on the system. But at the end of the day, it's how you work with them to do this. And again, I could add to my immigration programs manager's performance evaluation, but I didn't write it. Okay, and it's the same with D&D. They didn't want anything to do with me kind of running the program. So the question is, how do you work with the person, okay, the individual and his team, to build what can we do from a D&D perspective that's going to build a relationship with us and the local people. And again, they did not attend our management meetings once a week. Okay, was basically the global affairs staff, but I would meet with them once a week, and we would talk about the different things that we could do, and that's the critical thing. And it's the same with the RCMP, okay, which are important parts, particularly in a country like India, having an understanding of what's going on in that area and working with them and being colleagues, essentially, not manager versus subordinate, but a colleague, and how do we come work together on a vision. So again, it's how you approach that, and it goes back to Ian's point that he made, is being present and talking with people, going to their office, sitting down and saying, you're part of this team. That's really kind of critical.
Thank you, Stu. And I had an experience in Ukraine, which was you'll recall when the Russians shut off the gas for a week, and working again with the ND, and generally speaking, the collegial relationship was good, but sometimes a non-Gaac CBS will take a very different view of things. And the bottom line is, in a crisis situation, the ambassador is like a field commander in a war. You call the shot. The other thing that is good about, let's say, more traditional non-Gaac groups that are military or semi-military is that they do understand the concept of chain of command. When you evoke that, especially in a crisis, they respect it. But let's just say they're not necessarily the most modern in their approach, particularly if their head of mission is a female. So you have to, for me, the big thing is with the non-Gaac people, the mission as a whole, as others have commented, is there for the government of Canada and the people of Canada's interests. And if you are clear in the objectives of the whole mission and you respect and develop relationships with everyone, it usually works out. There's the odd time when a non-Gaac CBS is sent by another department to basically get rid of them. And then when that sort of thing happens, you just have to call up their supervisor, back in Canada and say, hey, we got a problem here. But, it's usually it's usually manageable through collegiality. Yes. Anyone else like to comment on that particular question? Ian?
Thank you very much, Abby, and very good points you made, Stuart. I would add that it's always the challenge is to create an environment in the mission where the other government departments feel part of the mission. They're not just co-located in the mission. And how can you create an environment where they feel their interactions and their teamwork with the other parts of the mission will help them do their job? And likewise, if you can find ways where their involvement and their particular strategic activities can help other parts of the mission, you're going to build that teamwork together, and ensuring that they don't become isolated from other parts of the mission just because of the nature of their work, whether it's in defense relations or security and intelligence, and that they feel that they are getting as much from other parts of the mission, and other parts of the mission are getting some from them, so that they build up that team, and that they're included in all of the activities of the mission, and so that they become part of the full mission and not just coming in and doing their work and leaving. And it really depends by the way that you create that environment so that they understand that and are not isolated.
And if I could just add something, Abby, and maybe Ian wants to talk to this, but
Sure.
you know, you have a prime minister's visit. That's the ultimate challenge in coordinating, right? The ultimate challenge, because you know, when you have a large delegation coming with the prime minister, even though you have a staff of 400 people in a place like Delhi, you have to have all the Canadians involved in that. And to try and convince program managers from other government departments that they have to dedicate some staff and get involved in the process, it's not always the easiest. And that's where, you know, some of your true networking skills within the mission comes to the fore. I don't know if Virginie, I'm sure you had the same situation when you've done this, right? And same with you, Ian. So
yeah, and also when you have a crisis situation, when you have a coup d'état, when you have something coming along that is unexpected that you weren't prepared for, by getting them involved in that, they feel that they're contributing something to the greater good of the mission and the greater good of the Canadian Team Canada, LES CBS, by having them their involvement there. And I certainly found that in New York during 9/11, in Beijing when we had the 44 North Koreans jump over the wall and live with us for 11 weeks, or when we had many ministerial visits and prime minister visits in Hong Kong. I mean, in the first 5 months in Hong Kong, we had 6 visits by Minister Baird.
Wow. That must have been fun.
Yeah. Well, at the same time, if I can add, you know,
please.
Yeah, I was saying at the same time, if I can add, well, you know, in Mali, we didn't have a visit of a prime minister, but at least, you know, as soon as we had a minister, people were so happy from the whole, you know, the whole embassy, that people, you know, really participated actively in organizing it. As I say, it's always a matter of, maybe, as Stuart and Ian had said, and you say that, Abby, as well, is to make sure that people feel included and that we are working in the same path, you know, for the same goal. And LES in Mali were fundamental. They were so helpful and in resolving the crisis from Falogé, but even you know, with the coup, because they are the basis of the embassy. They've been there a long time, and they help us. Well, yes, we can thank them, because without them, it would have been very, very difficult.
Thanks, Virginie. And I should say one thing that you raised, that's a sort of secret of tradecraft, and that's because it's discretion. One thing that is so important as a head of mission in all of your networking and your personal relations with your staff in particular is discretion and compassion. So you don't go around talking about it, but like Virginie, you know, you're sometimes in a situation where a staff member is experiencing mental health or has PTSD from a previous posting or even that posting, and is trying to keep their chin up. And there is a time to look at behavior that's not helpful, and, you know, have the person in and talk to them as a fellow human being and just say, hey, you know, what's up? Can I help you here? And forget all the other stuff, you know, all the formal stuff. Just look at them as a human being and try to find out what's happening. When you treat someone discreetly and with compassion, and more than fairness, with compassion, that will get around, especially at missions where people do not feel secure in the cultural or political environment. And that will get you not only respect, but support that, you know, you can't buy that. And all you've done is just tried to be a decent person to somebody. So these human qualities are not in a book. You can't learn them from a book, but these end up being more than 50% of being able to be a successful officer, in my view, or head of mission. Okay, another question, if I may. This is from Madeline Johnson, and she's first thanking us. Thank you, Madeline, for being here. And the observation that the element of personal relationships and networking as primary seems to have been lost in the Foreign Service and the Foreign Service training a bit. If relationships make or break success in achieving Canada's objectives, do the panelists have any recommendations on how PAFSO and GAC could better articulate this aspect and improve the skills of officers in this area and connect it to policy? So basically, you know, networking and the human skills, how can PAFSO and GAC emphasize this in a way that it will allow us to deliver on Canadian policy objectives better? You know, what are your views on that? Could I ask to start with Ian on this one, please?
Well, thank you very much for this question. I think we've all touched upon it, and I would reiterate it is getting out of the office and getting into the mission and asking questions. Listening skills are really critical. It's not only conveying what your particular strategic objective is, but hearing what people have to say, understanding what their particular views and perspectives are of a particular situation and where they want to take it. And as I alluded to at the end, yes, you are the captain of the ship, but the ship can only run with the full complement of the team, from the engineers and the navigators. And we need to ensure that everybody's working together and rowing in the same direction. And so ensuring that people feel that their voice is heard and that they are contributing to something will give them a great deal of reward. Yes, you might have to correct a particular direction that they're heading in by saying, you know, have you thought about this particular aspect, or that's a very good area, but before we get to that, maybe we need to do this first. And getting people to collaborate together from different perspectives. Stuart and Virginie have both commented on the experiences of LES and CBS in other mission programs who can contribute to another activity within the mission. That experience will make them feel valued and feel that they have got something more to contribute than just their day-to-day job. And I think that PAFSO and Global Affairs Headquarters can contribute to that by ensuring that there's more cross-fertilization of ideas between streams and between different divisions. I found that when I was in my job at headquarters is to get out of the office and to walk over and talk to people face to face. I think that too often we rely on email, and unfortunately within the current environment of the pandemic and COVID, we have a more and more reliable need to have these Zoom calls. But when we get back to an environment where we can look at each other and see each other and understand our perspectives face to face, we can achieve many things together. Stuart and Virginie, I'm sure you have other views and perspectives on this particular area.
Want to go first, Virginie?
Oh, okay.
No, Virginie. Okay, well, I think it's important that, you know, PAFSO in particular, in the context of conversations with the department, say, okay, fundamentally our role is to network. The network is going to be the value. Okay, so how do we build networking skills? And you need to understand that networking can mean different things for different types of personalities. Okay, and I'll use the example of the GSRP that was in Delhi. I had two over my period there. Virginie and, well, all of us will remember Sven Yashevsky. So Sven was probably the department's best expert on nuclear non-proliferation. but Sven developed the GSRP program. Okay, his number two was, Michael Korvik, okay, at the time that they did this. And Sven's approach to doing what his job was to go to the bars and drink with people, okay? Sven was an icon. He was different, okay? And he used to roll into the office at 11 o'clock in the morning. He'd come rolling into my, into the head of mission office, and he would sit down and tell me the most incredible stories about what was going on at the political level within Delhi, okay? And Delhi is like Ottawa, it's a microcosm, and it was a fascinating thing, and he would report on that. His successor was, again, somebody I knew very well and very good, and he was excellent, just did things differently, okay? And his approach was to work the think tank community in Delhi, which was a big community, and his reporting was completely different, but they both had their place. And I think it's important, from a pastoral perspective, to say, the challenge with both those is that they're different types of people. Sven would speak truth to power, and that didn't always pay off for him, okay? His successor was just quiet, very analytical, and quite different. And so we as a group of people need to appreciate, okay, the skill sets that individuals bring to the challenging jobs that we do, and have the time and patience to be able to put them in the jobs that will pay off for them, but not pigeonhole people and say, okay, that person's doing this, that person's doing that. So it's really important, I think, from a pastoral perspective, to say networking is critical. People go about doing it in different ways. It's important that pastoral talk to its own people to say networking is critical, so they don't sit in their office all day. As Ian said, you got to get out. You do it in different ways, right? So that's I think I would say that it's reinforcing with the department that everybody's going to be approaching things differently, but ultimately the end goal is the same. So,
thanks, Stu.
Yes.
Virginie?
Yes. No. Yeah, I totally share the views of Ian and Stuart. I would add that I think we need to go and network with other groups, at least on mission. We really need to try to, as I said before, not only going to the US, to the Europeans and France, but try to have a real relationship with, the Maghreb, other African embassies and developing countries. And I was always surprised to see that sometime when people were hosting, dinners, I with my for example, my officers. Well, I rarely saw people invited from African countries, for example. It was mainly Europeans, as I say. It was the US, and we really need to go en dehors des sentiers battus, aller vraiment voir les gens qui sont différents. Then they have different perspective and they can give you a lot of information. And for example, in Mali, in fact, it's because I had a very good relationship with the head of the Royal Air Maroc that I could get, 50 seats on a plane to evacuate the Canadians, because Air France, it was full. And they were, they could not do anything for me. But, Air Royal Air Maroc, yes. And they did it for us, for Canada also, because, we had a good relationship.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I have found that, being creative in your networking, plus it's more fun. It's more fun to get to know different kinds of people and get out of the, the bubble of the kind of Western groupthink.
Absolutely.
Okay, Marty, I know you just gave a 10-minute, but I don't know when it was. Are you there, Marty?
Yeah, we have about 9 minutes left.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so I have another question, and she's saying, thanks for reinforcing the humanist, compassionate element. What happens when we as FS experience the opposite? She's particularly interested in Stu Beck's views on that, with the devolution of so many powers to posts. The Hom's authority over our well-being has increased, yet GAC ranks amongst the lowest under the public service survey in terms of employee, I guess, feeling of being cared for. It's challenging to be at post, not an easy question. But any advice on when, oh, that's a terrible thing to have to think. Any advice on when do you know when it's time to leave the Foreign Service? And I just want to say on that one, you know, the role of AM Canada, we're former ambassadors. We're going through a transition right now, and part of it is we're not here to be Gaac bashers, but we definitely are here absolutely to support the Foreign Service and the idea of a professional diplomatic corps for Canada for the future. And this is why we have been so dogged and pleased with PAFSO's and Pam Isfel's response to us reaching out to you younger officers to be able to accompany you as the next generation, because we do believe in a professional Foreign Service. And we have had our share, I think, all of us, of some disappointing experiences. But overall, and I'm not just, you know, this isn't motherhood and apple pie. We've been so privileged to be able to represent a really good country and really good people overseas. And we want the same for you guys. So that being said, without the violin, I only play guitar. Stu, any observations?
Oh boy, Abby, that's a tough question. Okay,
Yeah.
And if I'm allowed, I'd like to start at one spot and then work through it a bit. Okay, just unpack it.
Sure.
So when we hire people, we hire some of the best and brightest people in Canada, in theory. Okay, back in the days when we all joined, the four of us on the panel here, we had to go through a recruiting process that included interviews and such like. So you know, and when I did it, and I can't speak for the other two, but it was 10,000 people applied and ended up with, it was a big intake in 1982. We had 100 and some odd people between the four streams. So, you know, you have very ambitious, very smart people, and the system itself creates problems. Okay. And I can honestly tell you this because I ran 3 promotion exercises when I was the Director General for HR. And it starts there. A lot of the problems that people have in terms of their expectations of their career path and what they want to do with the department, you know, comes through the promotion process. It's a very small eye in that needle, and it's a tough process to get through. So sometimes that affects people's feelings and they tend to go abroad, you know, with the hope of having a great posting and whatever. And sometimes those postings don't you know, meet their expectations as well. And that's when you have to, and I think Ian has brought it up, as did Virginie, you know, as a head of mission, you really need to sit down and be available, have your door open. You have to be able to talk to people, because there's so many things that create challenges in your day-to-day life when you're abroad, that, you know, if you're not willing to listen to it, if you don't show up at the mission, I honestly think that's one of the critical things. And I hate to say this, when I was, you know, Director General for senior management, I dealt with heads of mission abroad, and I used to tell them, go to the mission. You don't have an office in the residence and work out of the residence. You have to be present, because that's where the staff see you, and that's what you have to do with them. And I can tell you, there is still that sense of entitlement sometimes with HOMs, that they just do not think that they have to go to the mission. They can do their work from the residence. It doesn't work that way. That's not how you become, you know, you demonstrate any sort of compassion. It just is not, it's just not the right way to do it. So it's really that sense of understanding what the problems are, because as you move through the system, you've experienced them, you've had those same challenges yourself, and you just need to be able to relate to them. And that's critical. And, you know, one of the problems that we'd have every year in Delhi is, you know, you either had dengue fever or chikungunya. My God, you don't want to get chikungunya, but you know, a lot of people get dengue fever, particularly on the compound. And you, again, Ian is writes notes, and I commend you for doing that. I wrote notes as well, but you go and see people in the hospital when they get dengue. I mean, seriously, it is a very debilitating sickness. To the point where the New Zealanders send their people home after one bout with dengue, because if you get it, it gets really serious in the second time around. So again, you have to be able to say, okay, you pretty well are guaranteed over the course of a year that probably 5 or 6 people are going to get dengue, and in the worst cases they get 5 or 6, or maybe 3 or 4 get chikungunya. You've got to go out of your way to deal with this, because that is such an important medical problem. That's part of what goes on. So your compassion really comes down to the individual level. If you're not getting that sense of compassion, if you're not getting that level of expectation from your career, then you got to really think about whether or not this is the right thing for you. Okay, because ultimately everybody I think has said this. Abby, I think, has done a very good job of saying it's a joy to represent the country abroad. You should be having fun doing this, because not everybody has that opportunity. And if you're not having fun, if you're not enjoying it, and if the department is not doing what it should be doing, one, you should let them know, obviously. I think that's critical. But 2, then you got to think about, does this make sense to me? Because there's no point being unhappy in life. And there's no point if you think the system is letting you down. And that's what you have to deal with. Okay, so that would be my views. Compassion is critical on the part of a head of mission, and you need to understand it comes in different ways. And the department has to demonstrate that as well. And unfortunately in Ottawa, it's all about the tactical things that you do on a day-to-day basis, and sometimes compassion isn't there. And you just have to remind people that what you do here in Ottawa, you should be doing abroad, and vice versa.
Okay, thanks. Thanks. Ian, you had a couple of words you wanted to say? Ian, I unmute. Yeah.
My apologies. Those are very good points, Stuart. And I think that I would just add that when it comes time to the promotion exercise, this is a very stressful time for individuals to find the time to put in the energy abroad, especially to apply and to prepare. And I would always ensure that the officers and their managers gave the time for individuals to have that time to prepare, and it was executive leave. They were able to go away and work to prepare and to bounce ideas off, making sure that their application, if they wanted to, that open door was there for them to have a frank discussion about what they needed to include in their application, but also when it came time to the exam or the interview, that it wasn't something that was going to be done between 8 and 12 at night after they've gone home to their families, that they had time while they're away. Because sometimes when you're abroad, you don't put in the energy to your own issues related to promotion exercises that you might do at headquarters. And that causes resentment with regards to the organization and your own management. And I think that's very critical, that you give people the time to prepare, and you're there to support and coach them as appropriate, and that they feel comfortable with you doing so.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. Et Virginie, est-ce que vous avez des commentaires quand c'est le temps de...
Oui.
Enfoui?
Oui. Oui. Ben, je dirais que parfois, si des opportunités arrivent, peut-être de quitter le ministère pour quelque temps. Je ne sais pas, moi j'ai eu une expérience par exemple au bureau du conseil privé, et je sais que je suis retournée au ministère, mais en fait c'était très intéressant, et parfois il arrive qu'on puisse avoir des ouvertures dans d'autres ministères et qui peuvent aussi, je dirais, ouvrir nos horizons. Et il faut le dire, il y a beaucoup de gens aussi qui ont été chercher leur EX1 parfois dans d'autres ministères. Donc, si la situation est bloquée, je crois qu'il faut souvent s'organiser pour qu'on arrive à trouver des solutions qui nous conviennent à nous. Mais effectivement, comme le disaient Stuart et Ian, je crois qu'il faut analyser la situation et savoir si ce métier-là est bien fait pour nous, et si vraiment on est bloqué au niveau de la gestion, aller autre part, et on peut revenir aussi au ministère.
If I can just add to that, Virginie, when I was, again, doing the HR job, we ran a promotion exercise from, FS3 to EX1, and not obviously not a lot of people made it. Again, it was a small needle. One person who was a very capable officer came to me and said, "I can't take it anymore." And I said, "Well, I understand that. You're a great officer, trade officer, and all of us will know who the person is, but I won't say." I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, let me just check and see with other government departments if there are any promotion exercises that are going on there that are non-rotational." And again, by doing that, he went into a competition on a non-rotational job where the pool is much, much smaller, okay? And it got an EX1 job in that department, okay? He came back to the department probably 4 years later and has risen to become head of mission, EX3, and been very successful. See, there are different ways that you can cope with it, and also hopefully people will support that, okay? And that's not always the way in the department, as you know, but the people in senior management in the department should be supporting that in any way they possibly can, to me, quite frankly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah, and I would say, it depends, really. You will get some really bad bosses and really bad heads of mission in your career. It's like life, right? There's just some bad times there. And if you can wait it out, that's the good thing about our jobs, is you always, whether they're good or bad, you get out of them in 2 to 4 years. If you can wait it out without too much damage to your mental and personal health, you have to decide. If you can't, try to find something else. There are elegant ways one can move back to headquarters or whatever. If the other thing is, though, do let the department know what the real basis of the problem is, because you will be surprised how often everyone knows there's a problem, but there's a tendency to keep a certain veil of elegance over these problems. So if you win most and lose a few, it's probably worth it. But if you find that you're really feeling so bad about all of this, well, the department has changed, and as I say, we're here to look at what can we, with the next generation of foreign service people, help create for these new 21st century circumstances as the kind of foreign service that's fit for the purpose. Do we know the answers? No, but do we want to work with you on that? Yes, and I'm sure GAC does too. So it's a tough time to be in diplomacy, because the effect of horizontal factors on politics and diplomacy, the effect of the atomization of information and information control, the atomization of power. We don't know where we are really. And this is what I think is just so fascinating as a former diplomat, but as you can tell, still a diplomat in my heart. I would love us to be able to figure these things out together. So that's not an easy answer for you, Charlotte, but it's the best we can do. And now we're going to end on a more upbeat question from Pam Isfeld, which is, what is the funniest or weirdest thing that each one of us has had as a head of mission? Okay, Virginie, à toi la parole.
The weirdest.
Yeah, weirdest or funniest?
Funniest.
Stories from the trenches, stories from the war.
Story from the war. Look, I'm sorry. I really have to think about it. Maybe somebody else can talk about it. I
can go. Okay, so I'm in Ukraine, and I've been there for 2 years. It's a 3-year post. And the majority of our diaspora in Ukraine comes from Western Ukraine. And the eastern part of Ukraine, where there still is a large Russian-speaking group that was imported as laborers by Stalin, the West doesn't like the East, and not much of our diaspora comes from that. It's a big diaspora, over 1 million. So here I am, somebody who's gone, and the first ambassador that got trained in Ukrainian rather than Russian, and has managed to bumble along so I could at least do my daily life in Ukrainian. I want to be the ambassador to all of Ukraine, not just Western Ukraine, but even in the mission, I'm told, no, don't go there. You'll be eaten alive. They take the blood of babies and drink it and the whole thing, because they speak Russian, and they're not us. They're not our diaspora. But I thought, I'm going to go. So I went to Dnipropetrovsk, which is where Yulia Tymoshenko comes from, and it's very Russian speaking, and it's very Eastern Ukraine. And I go into with the mayor of Dnipropetrovsk, who looks like one of those little Khrushchev guys, you know, that hits their shoe on the table. And he basically did that. I go in and I expect just a nice meeting with the mayor, but instead there's all these television cameras all around that we hadn't been told about. And he speaks only Russian, and he starts to berate me as you, the diaspora, you're always coming here speaking Ukrainian, and you come here and you ask for the papers in Ukrainian and you do nothing. And who do you think you are in that? So I was quite shocked. Oh, and he hit his fist on the table all the time he was talking to me. So this was all political theater for the cameras. So I was a little taken aback. And I just said to him, I said, you know, Pani Mayor, that's Mr. Mayor. I said in Ukrainian, I said, you're quite correct. I am diaspora, but I'm Irish diaspora. So I learned how to speak Ukrainian because I'm the ambassador to Ukraine. That's why. And then, of course, lots of people burst out laughing. This was all being broadcast. And of course, he felt like an idiot. I get back to the hotel, there's like 17 million bouquets of roses for me. And for some reason, again, it's the human thing, he took to me and to us. And from then on, whenever we went to Dnipropetrovsk, we got the red carpet and he was so nice to us. I think because I made a joke of it rather than fighting with him in front of everyone. So there you go, diaspora politics. It pays to be Irish, Scottish. That was a funny thing. What about you, Stu?
Yeah, well, you know, being posted to India almost daily, you have weird and funny things. So it's kind of fun. Which one do I filter through? And I'll just make a slight comparison, because when I arrived in India, Indians were very, you know, they had known I was posted in China, and they kept saying, so how do you define the difference between China and India, right? And I was saying, oh, well, you know, well, obviously infrastructure in China is phenomenal, and you know, it's impressive. And I think India has a way to go with physical infrastructure. But being the true diplomat, I said your technology infrastructure is good, which is true. You know, that's why they're the leading BPO country in the world. You know, you do some things really well. That was when I first arrived. After about a year, I could say this, and this is the truth, because you know, when you fly into a place like Chengdu or Chongqing, or you go to, you know, Shanghai, you drive from the airport downtown, everything looks the same. You got apartment buildings, you got highways, everything is very, very, I won't say gray, but it can be quite gray as you do that, depends on the weather. And then you come into India and you land at the airport in India, and you walk out the door and the smell just hits you in the face, right? And it's like you know, whoa, what's going on? And it's the heat, of course, it's just incredibly hot. And you get in the car and you drive downtown and you see elephants and camels and people wearing bright colors. And it's just like, it's so totally different. And I said, you know, I used to say, well, there is a difference. Okay. The difference is that India has soul, because there's something about India that's really quite unique. Mm-hmm. Anyway, my funny story. So as I said, there's lots of things you could talk about, but I come home one day and everybody's to the residence and everybody's frantic. And they went, what the hell's going on? And the staff is out in the courtyard that's off the kitchen, and there's a big mango tree. And sitting in the mango tree is a troop of monkeys, okay, rhesus monkeys, and they're nasty, nasty, nasty monkeys. So you know, they had the staff cowering in a corner. They were throwing mangoes at them, you know, which is this is the honest to God truth. So I said to the house manager, Francis, I said, Francis, what are you going to do about this? He says, oh, don't worry, you know, don't worry, High Commissioner. We'll just get some firecrackers and throw the firecrackers at the monkeys. So I went, okay, why not? So they went out and bought big firecrackers, and the next day the monkeys are up in the trees again, and they start throwing fire. And these are big M30s, right? They're big fires, like a little hand grenade. Throwing these at the monkeys didn't faze the monkeys at all. They still stayed in the tree. So I said, okay, Francis, what's the next plan? Because you have to worry when you have guests coming and the monkeys are out there. It's terrible. He says, oh, well, there's another one. We can get the monkey police. I went, the monkey police? He says, yeah. So if you ever drive around at that time, I don't think they were allowed to have monkey police anymore, but back then you'd see a guy riding a bicycle with a langur monkey, which is a big monkey sitting on the back of the bicycle, right? And that was the monkey police. So if somebody had monkey problems, the monkey police would go and they would patrol the property. So what we had to do, my strangest, weirdest thing is signing a contract for a monkey police to come to the residence to patrol and keep the other monkeys away. So what the monkey, the first monkey that came was a really beautiful langur. It wasn't that big. It was a female langur, and she was hopeless, totally. Sorry, this is not meant to be a sexist thing, just a size thing, right? And then the second one came. He was a big guy. He was a big langur monkey, and he went around the property and did what dogs normally do around all the different spots, and we didn't have any problems. And he was such a nice monkey. He would come up, and of course, monkey police and the monkeys only work 9 to 5. He'd come in at 9 in the morning and leave at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So it was really one of the strangest things I've ever signed a contract for is, and I forget what they actually call them, but it's the monkey police. So
that's a good one. I think maybe we need our own stand-up channel. Virginie, are you ready to go now?
No, I'm thinking,
okay.
my God,
Yeah.
my life was boring. I don't know. I have to remember.
Yeah.
Okay, in Hong Kong, I was invited to celebrate the iftar at the Grand Mosque in Kowloon. And I decided that in keeping with my Muslim brothers and sisters, I would fast that day and not eat any food or drink anything until the breaking of the iftar and be in solidarity with everyone. And at the end of the day, I was getting rather cranky, and I said to Eddie, who was the driver taking me to the event, and he said, "So you all set, sir?" And I said, "Well, I will, but I'm really tired. I don't want to do this. I've been pushed all day, and I don't have any time for myself." And he said, "Well, of course you're tired, and you haven't eaten, and that's your reason." And off I went, and I got to the mosque, and I took off my shoes and I put them on the little rack outside the mosque, and I went inside, and we had the celebration, and I came out, and lo and behold, my shoes were not there. And I thought that someone had pinched my shoes. But after searching far and wide, I found out that the imam had actually put the shoes in his office as for safekeeping, so we couldn't have the Consul General of Canada's shoes gone missing, and I was able to find them. But the imam was rather pleased that I had taken the time out and spent about 2 or 3 hours with him, maybe an hour extra, looking for my shoes in the mosque. And we had a great time and laughing about the whole episode. But later on, as you recall, there was a very sad incident in Florida where a fellow went into a gay bar in South Florida and shot and killed many of the bar patrons who were in this gay bar, and he turned out to be a Muslim. And the local diplomatic community decided to get together to raise awareness for diversity and inclusion in Hong Kong and have a service of remembrance at the local cathedral to honor the victims of this particular tragedy, to show how our solidarity for the LGBT community. And I decided to invite the imam, and because I had spent time over with him and got to know him, I thought it would be very good if he came to the cathedral and joined the dean of the cathedral at this particular service. And it got back to the fact that because of our networking and because of the connections, he gladly joined in this particular event. It happened to be during Ramadan, and participate in, but I'll come right after. And it was a very moving experience to see the Dean of the Anglican Cathedral and the Imam both at the front of the church, lighting a candle on behalf of the victims of a very tragic shooting in a gay bar in South Florida. But it woke people up in Hong Kong about the importance of tolerance and diversity and inclusion, and was something that where a Canadian diplomat lost his shoes, but was able to network and turn it around and bring the communities together.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. Virginie, reprise, non?
Oui,
À la
reprise.
prochaine. Oh, oui, OK.
Oui. Non, j'étais invitée, j'étais à Bamako, donc invitée par un groupe de jeunes avec d'autres ambassadeurs pour, je pense, en tous les cas, c'était un événement pour fêter, je pense, un groupe de sport. Et ces jeunes commencent à dire « Ah, alors nous avons aujourd'hui l'ambassadeur ou l'ambassadrice du Canada, mais où est-elle, où est-elle » Évidemment, ils commencent à regarder parmi tous les Européens, personne ne lève la main. Et moi, je laisse faire, j'attends un petit peu. Et ensuite, ils commencent à dire, mais où est-elle? Donc là, ils recommencent à regarder parmi les Maghrébins qui sont un peu plus bronzés, mais bon, c'était toujours pas là. Et tout à coup, donc, je lève ma main et je dis, ah, mais je suis heureuse de pouvoir dire, voilà, je suis l'ambassadrice du Canada. Et en fait, le monsieur qui interviewait m'a dit, oh, mais elle n'a même pas l'accent. En fait, je trouve ça très drôle parce qu'habituellement, il y a des accents québécois. Moi, j'ai un accent très européen et en plus, je n'étais pas forcément la caucasienne. Alors, tout le monde a éclaté de rire parce que j'ai dit, mais monsieur, n'oubliez jamais que le Canada est un pays d'immigration. Et que, alors voilà, tout le monde a éclaté de rire. Et j'ai dit, ben, c'est ça la diversité aussi canadienne. C'est que bon, on peut avoir un accent un peu différent et aussi un visage différent. Donc tout le monde a éclaté de rire et j'étais connue comme voilà, l'ambassadrice canadienne un peu plus bronzée que les autres.
Fantastique.
Que mes prédécesseurs.
Fantastique, merci Virginie. Alors, nous avons tout à fait 2 livres am Canada. Ce sont des collections des histoires, la plupart comiques, quelques-uns sérieux, not mentioned in dispatches, etc. And you can go to our website and you can order them. I'm a trade commissioner, so trade commissioners always promote stuff. Okay, listen, j'aimerais vraiment remercier Pamela Isfeld et Apaz Pafso et tous nos participants de votre attention et aussi du fait que Pafso nous invite d'être en partenariat. Okay. Pamela says that the people who are hearing these stories will have an advantage at the pub quiz on a Friday. So there you go. Sort of like a game show. Non, mais vraiment, on est vraiment ravis d'avoir ce genre de partenariat informel avec PAVSO et on vous appuie dans votre carrière et votre engagement avec la diplomatie professionnelle. So I'd like to thank my panel, Ian, Virginie, and Stu, and I would like to thank Marty, who's kept us online. And Pamela, over to you, and thank you so much again for this opportunity.
No, merci beaucoup. I really appreciate everything that the time that you guys have all given and your willingness to be so frank with us and to answer people's questions. And I hope that we will see you, or I can't see people, but that you will join us for some of the events that we're having in the rest of the week. And I just wanted to remind everybody who is listening that we have our AGM today at 4. So if you haven't registered, go check on the website and there's instructions for how to register and come to that, where we'll catch you up on everything that's happened with PAFSO in the past year. And we also have at 6 o'clock tonight our session with Michelle Saumon of Lumina Consulting, who will talk to us about leadership and so on. So merci beaucoup, and I hope to see everybody soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
Thank you.
Ciao,
Thank you,
ciao.
everyone.
Good to see you guys.
Bye.